provided by Mr. Momo Music, YouTuber. Hey, G-Dad. Chat gang in the house. So I'm gonna come right in on the rant cam here. Tonight's gonna be a little bit different. You don't get the most dangerous intro tonight. I don't even know that I'll be exporting this to YouTube or anything else. This is just, I understand, like, people can only, some people can only watch on YouTube, and, I don't hold any ill will. I don't mean any disrespect or anything like that. Yes, Colin, you're interrupting the show, buddy. What is it? What is it?
It is a book thing. Especially if you read a lot, you can earn prizes, and then you can get like a lot of.
Yeah, they're doing their summer reading program again.
Yeah, can I join?
Of course, buddy. Of course. The more you read, the better, the happier I am. Look at all those books I've read. That's not even all my books. That's just the stuff that made it out of storage. So.
And also, you can win a camera.
You can win a camera?
Yes.
You do take a lot of pictures with your DS and stuff, don't you?
I'd rather just take it with the hat instead.
Yeah? Yeah. Doggo sighting, yeah. Mochi, Kid Gank. It's wouldn't it be a stream in Meph's house without all the above, right? Maximum chill. Yeah, so tonight, chill stream. I don't know that I'll be exporting it to YouTube. Not that I'm maligning anyone who watches my show on YouTube. I put it up there because life is hard. We can't all be on the same schedule, and I go live with what works for my schedule, not, necessarily everybody's. You're just every bit of chat gang, even if you're watching on YouTube. You comment, you talk to me on Twitter, you join the Discord. You're every bit a chat gang. Chat gang isn't, exclusive to subscribers or Patreons or anything along those lines. It's whoever wants to be part of the conversation. It's about solidarity. Always has been, always will be. The love and passion is what drives me, and in turn, kind of how I found this kind of community that cropped up around me. I don't think I'm in any way, the force behind it. I am certainly a force, and I've got a very strong personality, but the people who support me, something I do resonates with all y'all, and I respect that, I'm going live today with the chill stream because I have been kind of, I'm just getting pummeled, really, and it's coming at it all from all angles. It's not the worst I've ever been. I'm not in an unhealthy place mentally speaking or anything like that. So don't worry about me. This isn't about that. I've got a couple different things I want to talk about, but I guess I'm going to start with Superman. A YouTuber, I believe his name is Matt, he did a video on Superman a while back. And, I've quipped and commented on how cool Superman is more than a few times. If you see my big water cup floating around, usually it's my Superman cup. And there's been more than a few rants on my stream about how I don't understand how people, really like Batman, who kind of represents, like, fear and authoritarianism, and despise Superman, who is a symbol of hope and the best of humanity. Now, I get it, Superman stories tend to be crappy because when you're writing a story about someone who is the ultimate expression of humanity and humanly goodness, especially in the post-1990s sort of rise of the anti-hero era, especially in comic books, the sort of, basically the Layfield cover art era, really, like, the Cables, the Wolverines, later on you switch to doing some Image stuff. But what stands out to me with Superman is that, like, the symbol of hope, and in particular, you know, a couple things. You know, David Carradine's got a great Superman speech in Kill Bill Volume 2, where he talks about how Superman is Superman. It's Clark Kent, that's the costume. Another fantastic. There's, like, the philosophy of Superman is almost far more interesting than Superman himself. And if you read, like, into the subtext of the good stuff, you know, I recommend All-Star Superman in particular. There's really, I think there's a really good human message in there. Hell, if you go back and watch the first Christopher Reeves movie, I'm not the first person to point this out, you know, Superman is about having limits and exceeding them. Similar to Goku, which I think is why people really want to see who would win Superman versus Goku, is a far more compelling who would win fight than, you know, Superman versus Batman. I mean, let's be honest here. Batman would get frequent liquefied with laser beams from Superman's eye if he deemed to do so. But All-Star Superman is excellent. But the question I think the best Superman comics asks are ones of deeply rooted in philosophy and the question of what does it mean to be human. In the Christopher Reeves movie, like, it's, if you take it as allegory, and yeah, it's a cheesy flick by all measures, the first Superman, you know, he's given a fundamental choice between saving one person and saving many people. And, you know, he does the sort of egalitarian thing, and he tries to save many people, right? To do the most possible good he can. And then, at the cost of his personal love interest, right? At the cost of Lois Lane. Spoilers, by the way. And when confronted with that loss, he defies reality. He says that there is no limitation to the capacity for human goodness, and he goes back in time. Now, obviously, none of us can go back in time and, you know, fix our wrongs, and egalitarianism and trolley car, you know, the trolley problems and stuff like that are all, you know, fun to think about, and it's a lot different and a lot more complex in reality. But the one big takeaway I like to think about is humans exceeding human limit. You know, Superman does what every human currently in our society is being asked to do, which is reach their limits. You work a 40-hour work week, 50-hour work week, 55-hour work week, 60. You have to get food on the table. You have to feed and clothe your family or yourself. You have, you know, friends and appearances to keep up. You've been in a global pandemic situation, a once-in-a-century event, for over a year now. Constantly pushed to the limits, and yet you find a way to continue. You know, we all are fighting our own wars in our heads, and it's maybe not as awesome as, like, punching a tornado with your fists super juiced by the sun and stuff, but I still think that is impressive. And so I just want to say, hey, chat gang, how y'all doing? I myself have been being pushed to my limits, and like Superman, you know, trying to do the most possible good I can. And sometimes it means putting on a pair of your favorite socks, which I have on right now. I couldn't find the other one of my other pair of favorite socks, which are purple popsicle socks. So I'm rocking my my PlayStation socks, even though you can't see them. Very comfy, very light breathable. I'm wearing my loudest Chuck Taylors I own, which are the Frankenstein ones of the two different reds, the red from the 70s and the red from, you know, the modern era. They're like stitched together like Frankenstein. You know, I'm rocking one of my favorite shirts, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've got my favorite cup next to me. Just little pieces of things that make me happy and make me realize I was at my limits and have kind of been for the last few weeks. and giving myself these patchwork moments of, well, quiet moments, you know, like switching out of your work clothes, you know, something you can do and should do when you get home from that day. I'm no professional. This is just the stuff that I do in my sort of self-help kit, you know, self-maintenance kit. Oh, the American way is most definitely to shoot at the tornado. And G-Dad, thank you for gifting that sub to Leo. Yeah. No, I think that the most exemplary human is an alien is great for the thought experiment, because it asks what makes us human. I mean, that's an important, you know, think of it like the control group in an experiment, right? To ask what is humanity, you're not going to put humans, you know, in that as your control group. You're going to want something else and be like, what makes humanity, you know, what is this? And so it's perfect for the thought experiment that is Superman, that he's an alien. It's perfect. You know, he's a blue collar farm boy, right? Who grows up and chooses to be a journalist. You know, to pursue truth in reality. But yeah, self-maintenance. You know, again, this is what works for me. For you, it might be a hot and or cold shower, depending. Humanity increases your drop chance and resistance stats, I've heard. I think it does. Yeah, but I think humanity, I mean, at this point, we're going semantics here, Dr. Darkmatch. Humanity is usually synonymous with goodliness or altruism. For me, it's getting buckets. What makes us strive for good? Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I will concede to your definition, but I think that it's a needless splitting of the hairs. So, like I said, I got home. Another 12-hour today. I had 13 on Monday, I think it was, and I like a coward worked a mere 10 hours yesterday so I could meet with the roofing guy, and 10 hours on Tuesday. Like a mere coward, a mere mortal. Sexy vampire models is what makes us good. Perhaps, yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, like, in you know, the other great sort of moral philosophy on, I think that really has a very, very modern take, because Superman, the best modern Superman stories have kind of shifted, I think, a little bit. They've never been far off of what, you know, necessarily was before, but the new ones really have infused that, like, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean? You know, what is humanity? What is the most exemplary version of that? A human with no limitations, or rather, a human that each time they meet their limitations, they can exceed them. Like every human is asked to do every day. Work longer hours for less pay. You know. Tolerate more and more shit for less every single day. More noise in the media, more anger on socials. Like, just constantly more for less, right? So, I just found myself thinking about it. It was super fun. Where we go? Connected with a college kid from the Bahamas as on the outdoor court today. We spent an hour together just shooting and helping each other get better. It was super fun just to meet a stranger and connect in a common goal, to root each other to succeed. Joined excitement to see us both get better. It wasn't until 45 minutes in we got each other's name. This is a very good story. This is a good story. The other, I said the best take a sort of like modern morality, modern moral philosophy is The Good Place. I've name dropped it a couple times before. I think it really like hammers at the complexity of what it means to be good in our society. Go ahead and lift that a little bit. You know, there's like the Good Place literally ascribes goodliness to a point system, right? Like that's the whole thing at the beginning. Like there's how many good points you had in life, and so you're in the good place now. And there's, for people who haven't seen it, I won't give it all away, but it's pretty great as it goes on to dissect that idea about how the point system is flawed, and you know, to be a truly good person, you know, like where do you draw the line? How do you know? You know, like for instance, just kind of make this real for a moment, like, you know, the idea of a personal carbon footprint. BP, you know, one of the biggest oil baronies in the in the world came up with it. It's a PR like thing they came up with, right? To kind of shift the focus off of where the true polluters are, the biggest culprits of everything. It's no like nobody doesn't think fossil fuels are leading to increasingly worse and worse, you know, climate crisis. No, people argue over to what extent, how much is humanity doing it, yada yada yada. Like there's a lot of obfuscation of it, but the science behind it is pretty freaking rigorous. This stuff dates back to the 70s. Beyond contestation at this point. As universal as gravity, and more universal than a theory of physics, okay? And then they partake in, and a lot of what our politicians and our thought leaders are partaking in right now is called something called disassembly. It's a tactic in conversation and or debate where you propose a solution. It's not the solution, but you propose a solution, so people have to like basically talk about that thing. Like, here's a solution, and they basically become distracted by that solution, and now people have to argue over that solution, whether it's viable or not, and yada yada yada. Like, and so this, you sort of disassemble the argument and you just shift it over someplace else. And to bring this back to like moral philosophy, do you, knowing that this is largely a sham, stop trying to reduce your carbon footprint, realizing that it is but a drop in the bucket? Do you go full eco crusader? You know, try to like completely, you know, tear down the system? What do? Do you buy all the green energy you possibly can in your personal life? Do you ban straws in your restaurant if you own one? Like, where do you go? Right? Like, yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, maybe try to do that stuff, right? Are you a good person for trying to do it? Yeah. Are you a bad person for not? Probably not. You know, like, there's no point system for this shit. You know, a lot of people like to, like, kick around this notion of, like, oh, do we even know what good is? I'm like, to an extent, like, semantically speaking, you know, like, we don't have, like, a nailed down, defined good, right? You can define qualities of good, usually altruism, selflessness, right? Not genocide, so whatever the opposite of genocide is, like, you know, like, there are qualities of good that we've identified as a society historically for thousands of years. Philosophers have debated this stuff, but they're pretty on board with a couple things. And now that we've gone into, like, neuroscience and some stuff where we can actually, like, look at the brain when certain actions occur, and we go, this causes really bad brain damage. And, like, look at this stuff. You know, we actually have things we can observe. And, like, does good mean that? I think ultimately means, like, the health and well-being of the most aggregate amount of people. You know, like, you know, personal freedom is good. You know, validity of an extended, persistent society is good. The most possible equality and, like, we can achieve, these are good things, right? You know, and people split hairs. You know, I know last time we started talking about Ben Shapipo. I don't think Ben Shapipo is evil. True evil, I don't know. Like, humans probably have the capacity for both, right? But, like, you know, I don't think there's a singular being that people think of as, like, in disagreement to them. Like, this man's evil, right? Like, usually they're narcissistic. They're, like, oftentimes morally dishonest or intellectually dishonest. McConnell is certainly a sycophant and really interested in power at all costs. Is that what evil is? Power at any cost? Probably, yeah, right? McConnell, Cheney. Not the one reasonable Republican Cheney, you know, but Dick Cheney. You know, we're all varying degrees of dishonest at any given time. I'm a very honest person to a fault. You know, I don't even lie on my fucking resume. Which I'm told is doing it wrong. I agree, Zerg. Sex is good. The point is I'm not trying to nail down something definitive here. This is in the context of talking about the good place and how it's complicated. And I think mostly it ultimately comes down to one's will, you know, malice aforethought, you know, wanting to do harm, wanting power at any cost makes you kind of a bad person. Not necessarily evil. We'd have to get into the origins of evil, and we'd have to get into, like, what is evil. And like I said, neuroscience has some pretty interesting things to say about evil acts. You know, sexual violence, for instance, what it does to a brain is pretty phenomenal. Like, a phenomenal amount of damage. So we can kind of conclude that that's probably evil. Wanting power over others in general, evil. So, sorry, I'm just catching up on chat here. I think wanting to exert your power over others is evil. You know, the Stanford prison experiment, was that the one where, like, you were told to push the button? Even though people were, like, you know, weeping and pleading on the other side? Like, I've seen great capacities for good and evil. Like, I remember, like, the trauma I've endured growing up. You know, like, I don't go into particulars, but I think people can put two and two together that I've been, you know, physically abused. I've got scars on my body. Like, my mom used to put cigarettes out on me, and that's just kind of the stuff I'm comfortable talking openly about. Like, there's, but even then, I never thought of my mom as evil. You know, like, committing evil acts, certainly. Or certainly not good. I don't think she'd be going to the good place based on those actions alone, right? But I've also seen great capacity for good. I don't know that humans are one or the other. I think, people, humans are evil. No, maybe a little selfish, certainly lazy. Like, often falling in the category of, like, useful idiocy, like, not necessarily willfully malicious, though. I don't think, even with people who are politically and ideologically opposed to me, like, within Chat Gang and in the sort of extended network of Warhammer, and other nerdly vices in the communities I hang out with, if I showed up with my kids, in the zombie apocalypse, I think most of the people I've got at least the respect of, if not the friendship of, would let me and my family in, I think getting us to continue to fight over ideological, quite frankly, minor ideological differences is part of what keeps us separated. It's part of what stops the sort of class solidarity that we need to overcome the situation right now. Because as established before, it is not your fucking use of straws or your green leaf mobile that is contributing, even a million of you, that is contributing to the great crisis of our age. Contributing, but not contributing the most. And you're an individual just trying to get by. Just trying to get by. You gotta make your ends meet, right? Like, you got to get to work. Not everyone's in a position to purchase the most environmentally friendly vehicle. Some of us have to buy beaters. Some of us have to buy beaters and drive them into the fucking ground. And then buy the next beater for a few $100. And that's all you can afford, and that's all you can do? I'm not going to stop to say you're an evil person. Or even a bad one. And like I said, I've seen great capacity for good. I was in... So, when I was growing up, this is after my mom lost custody of me and my siblings. She got my siblings back, and she kind of just left me because I was at that point, too old to need my mom, is what she said. And my dad, with my mom out of the picture, tried to make contact with me again. I was about 14, was the first time he sent a letter. And then he kind of became a pen pal. We sent physical letters back and forth. And then he'd fly me out to New York City basically every summer, all the way up till college. I think starting at about 15. So I'd spent 3 months at a time in New York City. I was there before the Two Towers. I was a junior in high school when the Two Towers happened. Now, they've done really interesting studies on our flashbulb memories of this event, by the way. So your memories in general are kind of like imperfect. They're imperfect, and they're almost always editorialized each time you go in to kind of like recall them. And they've done some really interesting studies on people's flashbulb memories of where they were when 9/11 happened. And I'm not going to go into that. But I was a junior in high school, and I went to East De Pere at the time, and East De Pere is one of the highest public schools, like higher end public schools in the state of Wisconsin. At least was at the time. I'm not certain where it sits now. And they actually had like TVs in every screen, and they did like a little morning like student news thing and everything. Like, it was crazy. And they turned on those TVs in I was in science lab, but again, my memory's unreliable, so I could have been in homeroom, I could have been walking into the class to deliver, anyway, I don't go into that. So I was in there for that. I remember watching that. I remember trying to call my dad and see if he was okay, and not being able to get through. All the phone lines were busy. All the phone lines were down, right? Eventually, he called me and said he was okay, because he worked in Manhattan and lived in Queens. And I remember... So that, traumatic. That like this pandemic, 9/11, the societal scar it has left on us is felt through time. This will be felt through time too. Like, it's hard to not still feel that as a society. And I remember going out there, I think it was the year after. It might have been 2 years after. But basically, y'all may recall the rolling blackouts that hit. It was like Toronto, I think it was Detroit, I think it, and New York City. Basically, like, these power grids were, which are all semi-connected to, I believe it is Niagara Falls, like some sort of Niagara power plant. So all the cities that were kind of connected to that one, or that drew on that bigly, had these rolling blackouts hit. And I was in New York City when one of those blackouts hit. And I remember everything went out. And this is like the scar of 9/11 was very, very recent. Like, it was that city. Like I said, I'd been there before and then I'd been there after several times. And I remember it had to have been the year after. It had to have been my senior year before I went off to college. And I remember those blackouts hit. And you would think that there would have been pandemonium. Just utter chaos. And I remember the opposite. I remember seeing, we were actually up at Columbia University, which is where my dad, worked. And so we were there. I was just hanging out basically in the library all day while he was doing stuff. We got out. We were about to walk to get lunch, basically, and then hop on a train and head back to Queens. The L train, as I recall, not the letter L, the EL train, or the 7, I believe, but I may be mistaken. It's been a while. So we were gonna hop the train. I think we had to hop one to connect to it and then get on it. I knew that if I ever got lost in New York City, I was just supposed to look for the L train, though, and that's, find a connection to the L train, get off, and I could find my way home. So I just kind of learned that one train, basically. The blackouts hit. Like, at first it flickered when I was in the library, and then the whole city went down. Just the whole city. And immediately there was whispers like another terror attack, right? Like, first, like, was this like holding the breath sort of moment. And then I remember, like, as everyone's sort of like this collective holding their breath moment, they, like, people would like crowd around like the cabbies and the cars and stuff like that, and like we're listening to the radio to see what was going on. And I remember this out of body experience moment of, like, if you've been to New York City, there's very much, the best way I can describe it is a fuck you, have a nice day sort of mentality. People don't look at you. If you hold the door, a million people will just kind of come through the door. Every now and then someone might say like thank you or like give you a nod, but it's just like fucking people. I mean, it's a great city. New York City is a blast. Like, I love the East Village so much. All the old record stores and all the old used bookstores and stuff like that. You're right around the corner from like Little Italy and stuff like it. It just, But I remember this this moment where the city sort of collectively exhaled, and without the bullshit of they can't work. There's no power. Just this exhale for this one moment where, like, I saw people who would never interact or talk to each other or even acknowledge the existence of, just completely like hanging out, shooting the shit, just for like this precious half of a day. We couldn't open the fridge, because if you ever have a power outage, you keep your fridge shut, so it'll stay insulated, it'll stay cold, none of your stuff will spoil. So we had to, like, I think we grabbed bagels for dinner, and for lunch, like I said, this all started about lunchtime. There was I got the classic New York slice, right? Like the big old oversized, like you see it in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you're like, I need that slice of pizza. That movie, like you're like, that's the slice of pizza I need. Like, that's the slice of pizza I had in New York City. And it was because he had a wood burning stove, and he was like the only one on the block that still had like power to cook. And so just selling pizza like hotcakes, man. Like, they were flying, and like he's just flipping the pizzas, and like, dude, like, and he's just talking to everybody as they come in, and he's got like a pizza sale with a little like paper sign over it, like, yes, we're open, like, pizza sale, like, it's gotta go because all the dough's gonna go bad. So he's selling it like $1 a slice or $2 a slice or something like that. And and just this, I remember like having a conversation with him. I remember him like personally setting up the pepper flakes like on the counter as we got our slices, and just saying, man, you know, only wood burning stove, and like turning back around and like just like this glee, but also this like fucking strapped in, gotta feed people, you know? Like I remember that. It was like the opposite of Do the Right Thing from Spike Lee. Which is a completely different situation. I'm not trying to equate the two. Just a fun pop culture reference. And I like, so that happened. Then we went outside and we ate our slices of pizza outside, just kind of standing there. There's just no fucking place to sit. Like, everyone's getting pizza. So we went outside, we're eating our pizza there, and like, and there's this man in the nicest suit I'd ever seen. You know, he had the suit, briefcase, and everything. It was like a bluish, dark blue, as I recall, and he was like leaning in on a cabbie's like window, like, you know, this guy, I would stereotype the businessman in some type of like upper white yuppie class, leaning on, you know, cabbie who are union, blue collar. New York cabbies are their own type of zest, right? Like, and just, you know, like having this conversation and just like this solidarity and stuff like that. And I don't know, like that in that time period, I'm like full on goth phase, right? You know, I've got the long hair. I had like long hair. I owned black leather pants, like fishnet. Like I had pants with chains on them. Never Jinkos. I hated Jinkos. I made fun of people who wore Jinkos because, you know, that's what you do. A lot of buying Goodwill clothes and making it cool or making it black, right? Like a lot of DIY, you know, punk. You know, I didn't realize until later on that punk and goths are just like, you know, punks. Goths are a type of punk. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had since gone on to realize it in my older age. You know, like I was full on in my goth phase, very, very like misanthropic. You know, I'd been through shit. You know, I didn't see the world in a very positive light. Everything I had seen made me focus more and more on the negative. You know, I remember in middle school, you know, I wore black, had long hair, not as long as it got in high school by any means, but, you know, longer hair, you know, shoulder length. Well, just above shoulder length. And, you know, I came in the day, I never watched the news in like 6th grade. I think it was 6th grade. It's 6th or 7th grade. I came in and everyone started pointing at me saying Trenchcoat Mafia, and like making fun of me and shit like that. And I had no idea what the fuck they were talking about. I didn't figure out what Columbine was until I got called to the principal's office. Like, just, you know, that makes you kind of hate people a little bit, right? Like, and just this whole thing. If I'm not in New York City for that rolling blackout, I don't think I ever see or find the good in humanity. That was followed up by the 1-2 punch of going off to college and coming out of my shell a lot. You know, I'd always been kind of a closeted nerd, but I'd always been more obsessed with like being cool than letting people know I was a nerd. And letting people know you were a nerd was decidedly not cool, right? But in college, no one gave a fuck, right? Like, I really embraced my nerd. Part of it was like the people I met. You know, the first people I met were some of the, hey, you going to Gamers Guild? I'm like, what the fuck's Gamers Guild? Like, you play like RPGs and shit. I'm like, yeah, I do. Because I'd walk past my buddy Neil, and he's known as the Master. That's a whole other story. I'll explain it later. But just imagine like a 90s like hacker stereotype who's like basically like the in Blade, they've got that like hacker vampire guy, that except a human and not like morbidly obese, you know, just like but like lives in this like in hacks with the headphones on. Like, I've got great stories about the Master. His real name Jeff. Oh shit. Anyway, like he yeah, so I walked past their room. They had their dorm room open, and I saw their Soul Calibur 2 had like basically come out that year, around the time we went off to college. They were playing Soul Calibur 2. many of you in chat gang know I was a pretty good fighter player for a spell there, prior to the incident with my hand. They were playing Soul Calibur 2, and I'm like, oh shit, Soul Calibur 2, and I just like, I couldn't contain, my excitement, as I often cannot these days. And like, it was awesome. I sat there like just kind of like in their doorway talking about video games for a little bit, and then they all got up and they're like, hey, you coming to Gamers Guild tonight? And I'm like, yeah, and I just followed them to Gamers Guild, and that's that moment. Like, there's a series of moments through my life that I know like sort of guided me to the person I've become, as we all have them. We all have them. This is where I encourage people to seek out more experience and more perspectives to really. It helps you refine who you are, if anything else, and I think that is a noble pursuit. To never settle for who you are, but always aspire to be who you can be. And yeah, so anyway, that moment in New York City is a long, long road here, but I think that is where a lot of my sort of misanthropy died. Now, I know some people have an inverse story. I bet you there's people out there who are about, formative like me, and they only got the New York City to happen around 9/11, and they lost faith in humanity. I can only, sympathize and empathize with people whose road have taken them elsewhere. It's funny because when people think that you're a bleeding heart or you have a huge capacity for compassion and empathy, they think you haven't seen ugliness. And in my case, it's quite the contrary. I'd only known ugly. I grew up violent. I only knew violence. I was prepared for violence. I fought a lot. I put the Greek foreign exchange kid in the hospital, in a fight over. It's the dumbest thing ever. I don't even want to talk about it. Like, but a stupid fight a kid gets into, right? And to put him in the hospital is an exaggeration, by the way. He went to the nurse's office. They said he should probably go have the gash on his head looked at. So, it's not like he was hospitalized, but it makes for a better story if I put it that way, doesn't it? He didn't need stitches. They had an ambulance come because it happened at school, and like they couldn't get a hold of the parents, and then he ended up at the hospital. He had a nice gash on his head that was bleeding, and they wanted the nurse said that he should be looked at. But now I'm letting, what is it? Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Now I'm letting the truth get in the way of a good story. But yeah, like, I don't know. It was. I have to believe in a human capacity for good because all the bad stuff I went through. I mean, like I said, I've said on the show before, I'm a negative person kind of by default, and I have to fight against it every day. Some days it's harder than others. Through the summer, it's not as bad as you think. I mentioned I'm overworked. I mentioned a story about nearly brushing my teeth with soap. Because the soap dispenser is distinctly different from the tube that the toothpaste comes out of. But I was in the bathroom. I'm like, I grabbed my toothbrush. I grabbed it. I brought it down. And I went to pump the soap on it. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And I just like pulled it or set it down. And I quick like thumbed out a message to Discord. Because I'm like, you'll never believe the shit that I almost did. Because I go into autopilot mode. I just survive. I'm very good at this. I think humans are great at it. You, dear chat gang member, or if you, internet stranger, you're just passing through and you happen upon here, you're really awesome at getting by and surviving. You're asked every day to do more than your share. I respect you. I respect that. And I do ask that everybody try to be excellent to each other, because it makes all of our jobs a little bit easier. All of our lives a little bit easier when we have each other's back.